Sometime this past summer, like right smack in the middle of the summer, I found myself at Book Off. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Book Off, but it's a bookstore. I'm pretty sure it's a chain of bookstores, and it's like a used bookstore. There's also like old DVDs and audio tapes there. It's a pretty cool store. I was flipping through their different sections over there, and of course, I had to check out their graphic novel and comic book section. And I came across this classics illustrated version of A Christmas Carol. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Thomas Pitilli. I'm a comic book artist and an illustrator. And this particular Christmas Carol comic is illustrated by Joe Staton. When I picked this up off of the shelf, I flipped through it and quickly realized, A, I had never seen this before. I didn't know this even existed. And B, the artwork is really, really nice. I'm very loosely familiar with some of these classics illustrated books. They've adapted a bunch of classic literature. And I think for a lot of generations, this was their first introduction to a lot of these classic stories, was through these classics illustrated books. It's a pretty cool idea and concept, and I know that there's been some really great artists that have contributed to these over the years. I don't think they make these anymore. Let me know in the comments if I'm right about that. Hopefully I'm not. It'd be cool to see like modern day versions of a classics illustrated book, like contemporary comic artists adapting some classic literature. That would be really awesome. But I wasn't familiar with this one at all. And although I'm familiar with the name Joe Staton, I think I most associate that name with these really great comics that I used to read growing up. They were Batman Adventure comics or Batman and Robin Adventures comics. And they were adaptation comics from the cartoon, the Batman the Animated Series cartoon that I loved so much growing up. Those comics were really great back then too. And in my opinion, they're some of my favorite Batman comics. But I think Joe Staton was an artist on those series at some point. I feel like that's where I recognize his name the most. But after looking through this, I have certainly a real appreciation for his work and his ability and his skill. This is definitely not an easy thing to do, to adapt classic literature into comic book form. It's hard enough sometimes to adapt a comic writer's script into comics, let alone really, really traditionally written Victorian era fiction. And then on top of that, it's just drawn really, really beautifully too. It's the thing that really caught my eye when I took this off of the shelf. So when I bought this in the middle of the summer, I said, I'm gonna keep this for a YouTube video in a few months around Christmas time. And so here we are. I think this is the perfect time of year to go through this comic right here. And that's what we're gonna do in this video. Sit back, enjoy. If you haven't yet watched your Christmas Carol movie this year yet, or perhaps even read the novel, let this be your excuse to dive into that world. And let's look at this Joe Staton Christmas Carol graphic novel. Here's the introductory page over here, adapted and written and drawn by Joe Staton. Willie Schubert is the letterer, and that's notable because the lettering in this whole comic is actually fantastic. It's one of the things that we'll take a look at as we go through it. One of the things that first kind of caught my eye, and then colored by Les Dorchide, and I don't know if I'm saying that right. And then the cover by Gary Gianni. That's one of the things I was wondering if that was something that Joe Staton painted himself, but it's got a very different look to it. So that's cool that they credited that artist. Classics Illustrated, Berkeley First Publishing. Here's a nice little establishing shot here. There's really great just pen and ink work throughout this whole comic. And it's kind of fitting in a way because this is sort of, I guess, like, what would you call this, Victorian literature, the original Charles Dickens novel. And, you know, when I think of writers like that in that particular time period, I'm kind of thinking of someone sitting at their desk with a you know, crow quill pen, dipping their pen into the ink and then just writing furiously. And so in some way, this particular application of ink, I think, is very fitting for this kind of a story. But one of the things you'll notice on these pages is that the sense of place and the atmosphere and just all the clothing and era is so well drawn and well illustrated. But also there's some really nice like cartooning happening here too. You can see with the little kid here and the dog. There's a playfulness to the art as well. I'm always kind of drawn to art that strikes that really nice balance between believable sort of environments and shadowing and even proportions to some extent, mixed with stuff that is a little bit more cartoony and expressive. I think when artists are able to strike that balance, it makes for very pleasing comic book art. And I just love the boldness of the shadow work here too. These solid black areas, cast shadows, and then this really nice like cross hatching effect that's happening here in this panel. This cannot be an easy thing to do, to adapt any kind of like prose, but certainly a classic like A Christmas Carol. You know, it's a wordy book. It's a very deep book in a lot of ways too. There's a lot of levels that it works on. So to adapt it into something like a relatively short comic is definitely no easy task. And it's pretty evident here that Joe Staten's strength really lies in his storytelling. But not all visual storytellers are good writers, and certainly not all are good like adapters. So that's evidently one of the things that makes Joe Staten unique, and his particular set of skills in the comic art world. I wonder how long it took these artists to make these classic illustrated graphic novels, or how long they really had to work on these things. Like I said, these are not easy novels that they're often adapting, and there's also elaborate, costumes and specific time periods, and all of that goes into, interpreting into comics a classic like this. So kind of wonder if this was done in like a kind of monthly comics pace, or if he had more time to do preparation work, character designs, and just figure out how he was going to flesh out and pace the story. One of the things that I first noticed when I picked up this comic was how well the comic was lettered. That's not something that I often notice right away, but because this was lettered so well, it kind of stands out. You could see here where the first ghost that Ebenezer is visited by here. I'm assuming every ghost is going to have their own particular font just to further bring those characters to life and give them a different voice. And that's pretty unique as compared to the narration boxes lettering, and then as compared to Ebenezer's lettering himself. So there's a lot of like really dynamic lettering happening, and just a lot of really nice care taken in the lettering. It's one of the things that I'm paying more attention to myself lately as I try to get better at my own lettering, particularly lettering by hand. It's something that really has always been a challenge for me. So I'm a little bit more tuned into lettering. And as I do studies of different artists, here and there in my sketchbooks, I've been trying to just copy some different letterers and their fonts. And I feel like this is definitely something that I should be doing some studies of for sure. I'm assuming this is Ghost of Christmas Past visiting Ebenezer here. A very kind of creative solution to that. Every artist throughout history since this story has been around has done their different version. There's so many illustrated versions of this story, and this is the first time I'm seeing a comic adaptation of A Christmas Carol. So it's kind of cool to see how each artist interprets all the different ghosts and how they each, in different ways go about bringing this story to life visually. But when I first saw this ghost, actually, I kind of thought it had a almost like a an Arthur Adams kind of vibe to it. Just the way that maybe the eyes and the face are drawn. There's certain areas throughout the comic too, in certain faces where I see a little bit of Arthur Adams. And because I'm not super familiar with Joe Staton's work, I'm not quite sure who might be influencing who in this scenario. Here's another example of like a Arthur Adams kind of look here. These two faces, this woman's faces in both of these panels particularly kind of have like a Arthur Adams vibe to them. Let me know in the comments below who might be influencing who in this regard. People often cite certain influences in my work sometimes that, although I may be very flattered by, wasn't like consciously influencing my work, but it kind of shows up one way or another through osmosis or just through a combination of different influences that kind of like manifest themselves. So it's always curious to see where that stuff comes from. I would love to see a comic like this in complete black and white, just to even see like JPEGs of the original art. I could imagine just a panel like that looking really, really nice in just black and white. Little areas there where the outlines of the hand drop out just to show that strong source of light that's coming from the door. That's really nice. And it's also really well colored too. You can see the colorist is really like picking up on a lot of the cues that Joe Staton is putting down without overbearing all of these beautifully inked pages. And just the street scenes and architecture and backgrounds, I really love the way it's very organically drawn, much like the figure work. The two don't exist in different worlds. Sometimes you see that perhaps a little bit more in modern day comics where the figures and the backgrounds kind of seem like they might have been drawn by either two different artists or almost in that like animation approach where the figures are kind of like existing on top of these like painted backgrounds or something like that, where this is much more holistically drawn. Everything kind of like, shares the same type of rendering and loose approach to the way that everything is drawn. It's all very cohesive and looks like it's, all touched by the same hand. A lot of research must have gone into all the different wardrobe and even furniture of the time, just like chairs like that. That's a little detail that he might have picked up in a magazine or something like that, a clipping from a book. This was published in 1990 originally, so Google Images wasn't yet around, and there really wasn't like internet in the way that we have it now. So likely this was all like clippings from magazines and books and things that he's collected over his career. But yeah, little details like the tables and chairs, that all goes a long way into just giving the reader a sense of place and a sense of time. The pages with Ebenezer on him are some of the best for me. I really love the way he draws that character and his facial expressions, and also like his evolution throughout the story. That's really well done. I love a panel like that too. You could just feel the pen nib scratching against the page right there. A great example of how really like just scribbly subtle lines can evoke like a whole mood and an atmosphere. You don't really need much in the way of special effects or post-production or anything like that. It's just a well-skilled hand that knows how to use the tools that they're using, and when it's accompanied by such beautiful lettering too, all the better. Here's a big reveal here. This is a nice splash page right here. Almost feels like EC Comics or something like that, EC Horror Comics. And in a lot of ways, it seems as though the story itself, this Charles Dickens Christmas Carol story kind of like lends itself to that kind of an approach. There are elements of this story that are really dark and scary, and that kind of like old school horror way of drawing a splash page right there. It kind of definitely lends itself to a story like this. It's just a really nice spread in general. I kind of want to try to get the whole thing in the shot right there. And then, of course, Ebenezer's transformation. I think we're all familiar with this classic story, and it's great to see the evolution of the character through the lines that Joe Staton is putting down. Not only through his expression on his face, but there's some lighter lines happening here now in this last part of the story. This is kind of like the rebirth and renewal part of the Ebenezer arc. And you can see there's a lot less like strong, heavy shadows happening. It's daytime, it's brighter. That's a really nice way of using the lines and the inking and the art itself to show like transformation and just the complete arc of the character. Old people hands are probably some of the more fun hands to draw, just because you could really get in there with all the lines, the knuckles, all the wrinkles, similar with their face. It would probably be really fun to have an old person as your main character. A lot of liberties you could take with the inking in particular. And that's it. Here's that last splash page right there. How many pages is that? That's 44 pages. Again, that's a really tall order to get all of A Christmas Carol into a 44-page comic book. Definitely takes some skill as both a writer and a visual storyteller to be able to pace that out and do it in a way that still maintains the integrity of the original work, but makes it more accessible and well adapted to the comic book medium. So really impressive stuff. And also just really great to look at all these beautiful drawings in here. There's some really nice things that I might have skipped over on the original pass through, but really awesome work here. Like I said, I thought this was the perfect time of year to look through this particular graphic novel. How did you like it? Let me know in the comments below. Have you seen this Classics Illustrated book before? I haven't. If there's one that is really great that you would love for me to look at, perhaps there's an artist that I might even have talked about on this channel that has done a Classics Illustrated comic, please do let me know in the comments below. I'd love to maybe hunt a few more of these down. Also, if you are a Joe Staton fan, please do let me know as well in the comments if there's any other Joe Staton work that I should look at. I was really drawn to his artwork in this book, and I don't know if this is the style that he always works in, but I love this like scratchy pen and ink line that he's putting down here. Anyway, this is a simple video. That's all I really got for this one. Hopefully it scratches that little bit of a Christmas itch that you might have right around this time of year. So thanks for watching. Hit that like button if you do like it. If you're not yet subscribed to my channel, please do hit the subscribe button as well. I put out regular videos at this point now too. I have a whole catalog of videos that you could go back and look at. And if you'd like to dive a little bit deeper into my work, my process, and just help support the channel and my independent comic art and illustration endeavors, consider joining me on my Patreon. It's where I post a lot of stuff I don't post anywhere else. We're having fun over there, and if you'd like to join, I'll put a link in the description. I hope to see you over there sometime soon. I may have another Christmas graphic novel themed video coming your way soon. Depends on how much time I have before this month ends. So stay tuned for that. But yeah, that's all I got for this one. As always, thanks so much for watching. I'll catch you in the next one. Take care.